My name's Adele Onyango and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to episode 137 of Legally Clueless podcast. Super happy to have you as part of the tribe. Make sure you join our online community. We have an Instagram page. That's Legally Clueless Podcast. A link to it is in the show notes. If you want to chit chat about the podcast on Twitter, just use the hashtag Legally Clueless. And what's the other thing? Oh yeah, it's a major thing. How could I forget? There is a new episode on our YouTube channel. There is a link to our YouTube channel in the show notes. And if you head over there, you will see a new episode that is Legally Clueless Tours Paris. Yes, we did it. I'm super excited about that episode because one, we did like we went to Paris. Yo, that's exciting. In the episode is so beautiful. It's just so well done. And I'm not even tooting my own horn. I'm tooting the horn of the person who does all my video production, who is Roy, my very good friend. Honestly, when you see the video episodes, it really is, especially the tour ones, those are his creations. Like, he writes the scripts and like tells me, ooh, this would be a really good idea, good theme. And he did that for the Paris one, and it's just so, like, the intro, if you've watched a French film called Amélie, you will completely understand the intro of this Legally Clueless Tours Paris episode, which I thought was just, it came out so well. And then, okay, so in the episode, we take you to various iconic places in Paris: Eiffel Tower, Arc de Triomphe, Sacré-Cœur, and its 292 stairs, and so much more. And then we also get to chit chat with Africans who are living in Paris. So an amazing Moroccan lady called Amina, who's doing fantastic work. She's in the episode. My long lost buddy, oh my God, Lucille Omundi. She's from Kenya but living in Paris. And so we got to chit chat with her, and that was just so beautiful. It's an absolutely amazing episode that I think you will really enjoy. So make sure you click the link in our show notes, check out our YouTube, watch the episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. Of course, subscribe and turn on notifications and all of that good YouTube stuff. All right. In this episode, I'm really excited about the story that you're going to hear. It's a story we recorded during the tour, which is why I'm excited. And it was recorded when we went to Mombasa. Now, I do have to tell you that this story does reference drug addiction, suicide, and sexual assault. Very heavy stuff, but ends on a happy note. And so these are themes that I know can be very triggering to some people. So if you can't handle anything to do with either of those things, you may want to sit this episode out. Yeah, because those can be very triggering. In fact, from this point, because I'm just about to play what you can expect from the story now.
The first time I had contact with drugs was around the age of 17, but hard drugs was 21. I wasn't feeling the way I was supposed to feel about my child. Even just holding him felt weird. Breastfeeding him, I'd be like, why is this tiny human attached to me? I found myself at Nyali Bridge with my son in my arms, ready to throw ourselves over. You want to find drugs? Find car wash people. I actually sat down for 2 good months and did research into different drugs and their effects so that I could choose the perfect drug for me. Cocaine seems to be the best choice. This is the fallacy about drugs. Do they help? For a minute, then they make you feel worse. My money spending just skyrocketed.
That is Mo's story. That's coming up a little later in this episode. But before we get to it, first and foremost, I really do apologize for the last 136 episodes if I have been yelling at you, if I've been sounding a bit louder than I should have. This is how I'm meant to be sounding. I'm watching more and more tutorials around my microphones and getting to understand them much, much more 2 years in. Oh my goodness. But yeah, sorry about that. Anywho, moving along swiftly. Listen, there's 2 things I want to share before we get into the song of the week. And they're random, but also they're not. Are they random? Yeah, okay. They're just things that I am genuinely thinking about in this moment. So the first thing is that I'm really happy They're two very positive things, okay? Number one, I'm very happy that all the women in me in this moment are allowed to speak, and I'm listening to all of them. The one who enjoys a good time, the one who's super lovey-dovey and mushy, the one who's all about like politics and governance, the one who's all about podcasting and media, the one who's about her work, the goofy one, the one who's all about sex. I'm made up of so many women, and I think for most of my 20s, I was trying to be the right woman according to what society wanted, and like a singular type of woman. And right now, I'm just allowing all of them to thrive, and I don't feel the pressure to be only one of those women, or to be a particular way. I just feel like in this moment right now, I know life changes. So I'm really enjoying this moment because I don't know. Next week's episode, I could be singing a different tune. But right now, my feminine canvas is just like blank and anything goes, which is a very liberating place to be in. And the second thing is to do with feelings and emotions, right? It's such a good, I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat right now as I tell you, because of how happy this is making me. I'm not censoring or shaming myself for feeling. Whatever the feelings are, it's always been my belief that, it takes a lot of courage to feel and to allow yourself to feel and to acknowledge those feelings and to articulate those feelings. And so I'm just at this point where I'm acknowledging my feelings and honoring myself for being courageous enough to feel recklessly. I'm not like manipulating my feelings into a thing or using them as a tool or like caging them or whatever. I'm just like, this is what I feel, and it's a really awesome place to be in. Yeah, as I said, enjoying the moment because I know life is up and down, and it could be different even just tomorrow. Who knows? But in this moment, those are the two things I'm feeling, and I wanted to share them with you. Okay, let's jump into the song of the week. Ooh, which is a really cool song. How did I find this song? I feel like I heard it in a movie. I think that's what happened because I don't even know this artist, but I think I heard it in a movie and I was like, I heard it in a movie. Can't remember which movie or series, but it was like I had 4 lines and I was like, ooh, I love those words. What song is that? And I found it. And it's a song by Tyler Jane. The name of the song is Energy. I really like it. It's like a nice feel-good song for like a walk in the sun or a drive in the sun, and in the morning. It's a good song. It's not a song you'll write poetry to, but it's a nice song. And yeah, check it out. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Let's jump into the story. Again, recorded during our August Legally Clueless tour, recorded in Mombasa. And it's all about Mo's journey overcoming drug addiction. Again, I have to give you a heads up that drug addiction obviously comes up in the story. So does suicide and themes around sexual violence and sexual assault. So if you cannot handle anything that touches on those, you might want to give this episode a pass. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless, coming to you from the road. We partnered with Africa No Filter to take this podcast on tour to Nakuru, Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nairobi, bringing you powerful and inspiring African stories.
My name is Mo, and I am from Mombasa, Kenya. The first time I had contact with drugs, not just hard drugs, but drugs itself, was around the age of 17, but hard drugs was 21. 17, I was in college, experimenting. You go out, you have a beer, you go puke, and you're like, okay, this is not fun, so I don't want to do it anymore. So it didn't really stick with me. So I didn't become a party animal or anything like that. I was more into my books and my friends. But from then on, I was just a good girl. In general, I was a good girl. I was known to be a good girl. So at the age of 21, this was after I had my son at 18. Now, I didn't know, but I had really bad postpartum depression. All I knew was I wasn't feeling the way I was supposed to feel about my child. I would do everything I needed to do for him, take care of him and make sure he had what he needed. But even just holding him felt weird, breastfeeding him, I'd be like, why is this tiny human attached to me? So it just got worse and worse and worse. Then when I realized something was like really wrong, I got myself some help. I found a psychiatrist and went to talk to them. They gave me some pills, antidepressants. So in my head, I was like, oh, problem sorted, But the meds did nothing. Took them, nothing happened. Changed psychiatrists, took more medication, nothing happened, and I'm getting worse and worse. Now I'm having thoughts of suicide. I'm having thoughts of getting rid of my child. It just kept on getting worse. But the thing that pushed me into doing drugs was a situation whereby I found myself at Nyali Bridge with my son in my arms, ready to throw ourselves over. If it hadn't been for my friend calling me at the exact moment I was about to cross the railing, literally I wouldn't be here for this story. She called me and I told her where we were at, and I was crying, and she just came, took us to her place, calmed me down, talked to me until I felt much better, But then the next day I was like, I've tried medication, it's not helping. I've tried therapy, it's not helping. How about these drugs that make people happy, I see people smiling after smoking weed. There must be something there. You can't be smiling for no reason. I didn't know where to find drugs, but I knew for sure, you want to find drugs? Find car wash people. You will always find someone who knows someone from car wash people. So I went to the nearest car wash where I was known, asked one of the guys, and he directed me to the nearest kush dealer. So that's how I started smoking pot. And I smoked pot for like 6-7 months before it stopped being enough. And I see, now this is, on hindsight, this is where I say, like, I'm dumb. God damn, I'm dumb. But I actually sat down for 2 good months and did research into different drugs and their effects and everything you would expect from them, so that I could choose the perfect drug for me. Literally. I'm psycho, that is what I am. So did my research and I was like, okay, out of everything that I've read, cocaine seems to be the best choice, because online it tells you that cocaine doesn't have any physical withdrawals, only psychological ones. I thought I was smart enough to beat the system. Psychological, I mean, a bit of anxiety, that's nothing. And sort myself out. I went to my kush dealer, because again, I knew if I wanted hard drugs, you go to the nearest small drug dealer, he'll take you to the bigger drug dealer. So I went to my kush dealer, told him what I wanted. He hooked me up with a guy, and that's how it started. At this point, I had moved out of home. I was living on my own with my son. Like, in all honesty, my life was perfect up to that point. I was 21, 22. I had just bought my first home. I was living on my own with my son. I had a maid. I had everything I could want. If I wanted to travel, I could travel. If I wanted to go into the mall and buy a cloth worth 40 G's, I could afford it. My life was literally perfect. So no one would have ever guessed that mentally I wasn't okay, that things were just getting worse and worse as every day passed by, Yeah, so I hid it really, really well. See, this is the fallacy about drugs. Do they help? For a minute. Then they make you feel worse. But you see, they never tell you that when they sell it to you. They just tell you, oh, this is the good stuff. This will make you feel amazing. But once the drugs wear off, you're back to the same position you were at before, feeling the same feelings you were feeling before. You not even feel worse because there's guilt and shame associated with it. But you can't stop, because the only thing that makes you feel better is the same drug that makes you feel worse at the same time. For me, I don't think there was a specific aha moment, really. It was more of a gradual series of things that kept on happening. First of all, I was in a Bible study group with a group of women who I considered my best friends in the whole world, So they started noticing that I was isolating myself from them. I mean, you can't just go and be sniffing coke in front of people, something you hide, especially being a woman. You hide it even harder than a man would. So I started isolating from them. I had already isolated myself from my family because my son would come home from school. I'd send him over to my mom's place, but I'd stay at my place until he comes back at night just to sleep. And the next day, do the same thing. So I'd go for months without seeing my mom and my dad. And my family is very tiny. We're literally a family of 4, so that was weird. And then from then on, my money spending just skyrocketed and it just kept on getting worse. So what I was doing at the time is, since I had stock that I had bought before, I was just selling my stock slowly. So my parents' stockbroker realized that my rate was getting out of control and he sort of snitched to my parents, and my parents were not happy. So I lied to them and told them I had a liver condition that was making me really sick and making me spend a lot of money. And because I had been such a good girl my entire life, they fell for it. Mind you, by this point I had lost 30 kilos. I was looking so sickly and so bad, you would believe that this is someone on their deathbed. So it was so easy for them to fall for that she has a liver condition, So there was that. But then what really hit the roof for me was a specific day when I was at home and my son came home from school at his normal time, midday, and I didn't want to see him. I was busy getting high in my bedroom, so I've locked the room. The maid has picked him up. He's eaten his lunch. But my kid is so smart, he always used to sense whenever I'm in the house. So he actually came and peeped under the door, saw my feet, and started calling my name. And I ignored him. I straight up ignored him. Pretended I couldn't hear him, that nothing was happening. And I think the guilt from that just popped in my head and was like, okay, no. We do many things, but we don't do that to our child, So that for me was just it. I was like, okay, now I need to get some help. So the next day I started doing my research into rehabs to see what was out there. This was actually just 8 months into it. So this is the kicker. Mombasa has the biggest drug problem in Kenya, but it also has the fewest rehabs, especially for women. Literally, as we speak, there are 3 rehabs for women in Mombasa that accept women in Mombasa only. So at the time, there was one that was accepting, and I managed to talk to them about my situation and told them I couldn't do an inpatient program because I had a small one at home and I didn't want my people to find out. So we worked out an outpatient system. So what would happen was, in the morning, instead of going to work, I would go to the rehab, spend the day in the rehab, and then in the evening, my friends who were covering for me would come and pick me up, come and spend the night with me to make sure I don't go out to score more drugs, and just sort of guard me to make sure I'm not around any drugs, any paraphernalia or anything like that. And that worked for like 3 days until on the 4th day I lost my mind. I totally flipped. Locked myself in my bedroom with my kid, refused to leave. Mind you, we were living on the 5th floor and I hadn't had an open balcony. So my friends got freaked out because they knew about my suicidal tendencies. So I remember it was my grandmother's funeral that day, and my dad was traveling up country with his family to go and bury my grandma. And my friends called my dad when he was somewhere in Jomvu, and he just about turned, came back, and I had to tell him the truth. And I was like, you know what, Dad, the truth is, for the past couple of months, I haven't been sick, I've been using drugs. This is what has been happening. The shock on that man's face, I think he nearly swallowed his tongue. He couldn't believe it. He could not believe it. So he managed to talk to my friends, who gave him the number to my therapist, and they convinced me to talk to the therapist, who in turn convinced me to go into the rehab and stay there for a few days until I was more stable. I didn't know, but a few days was actually 3 months. I was pissed off when I found out. Trust me, I was pissed off. Because I'm like, I started this process on my own. You guys are coming in the middle and then you're just ruining everything. Like, thankfully, 2 weeks after I had been locked in there, there was an inspection going on of rehabs in Kenya by Nakada, and the rehab was found not up to code. So I was given an option of being discharged to a hospital, to my parents' home, or to my best friend's house. I chose to go to my best friend's house. So that's how I got out. Yeah, but if it wasn't for that, I was stuck there for 3 months. And the place was hell. Not as bad as the ones you see in Isili, but hell in the sense of, first of all, there were no classes, there was nothing to do, there was no TV. Like, literally, your job was to sit and stare at the walls from morning till evening. The only thing that was different was mealtime. You get called, you go eat. Then you go back to staring at the wall. Then at night, they would lock us in like animals. I have this major fear of, what if a fire starts? You've locked all the doors and they're metallic. I can't even break them, you know? And we tried talking to them, telling them that, okay, fine, lock one door, but leave the other one open so that someone has an opportunity to get out in case of anything. But no, apana, they can't do that. You have to be locked in, like you're some type of crazy person. So that really pissed me off. In terms of how they treated us and whatnot, they basically just ignored us. They didn't try to help us. They didn't try to talk to us. It was, oh, you're a patient here. Okay. Go about your own business. So for me, it was a waste of time and money. I stayed with my best friend for like a week before my withdrawals got really bad. My emotional state was very unstable at that time. So I went back home, but I was having therapy sessions every day at this point. And after about a month and a half of therapy, my doctor told me I was better. I could go back to work now. So I went back to work, you know, and things seemed to be working out really well. And then around 4 months in, I just recall sitting at my desk at work thinking, I am bored. I need something exciting to happen. And the next thing I knew is I was on my phone scrolling for numbers. I found the number I needed, which I was supposed to have deleted, but I never did. Called him up, asked him if he had any stuff. Told me he did. We met up and I was back to it again. But this time I didn't use for very long. I used for about 4 or 5 weeks. Then I outed myself because I was so scared of where I would end up. So I called my therapist, I told her the truth, and she helped me talk to my parents about it. They were really disappointed, but they were supportive. And this time they took me to rehab in Nairobi. The rehab I went to was good and bad. Good as in really justy place. I mean, food amazing, rooms, hotel room material, how you're being treated like a king and queen, all of that. But in terms of their treatment practices, it was a waste of my $500,000, my dear. That money pains me up to today because it could have done way better somewhere else. But they really didn't have much of a program. I didn't learn anything except that there was AA and NA. That's the only thing that I left knowing from there. I came back home. This time I managed to stay sober for 11 months. Then I relapsed again. But then instead of telling my parents, because I knew I'd just end up in rehab, what I did is I came and I talked to a doctor here and convinced him that it's okay for me to just go for a detox. I can handle the recovery part on my own. And I went into hospital. I did a detox for a week, came out, stayed sober again for around 6 to 8 months. I'm not sure, but around there. Relapsed again, convinced the doctor the same thing, went detoxed. Like literally my life was a pattern of detox, until 2 years in, I just realized that I'm not getting out of this cycle. I need to do something drastic. So a cousin of mine was leaving the country, going to Dubai for work. And I decided, why not look for work myself, just change my environment, see if something different would work for me. So I started looking for work while I was here, and I was lucky I got a job, signed the contracts, moved to Abu Dhabi immediately. And it worked. I stayed sober while I was there for over a year and a half. And I mean, I was the happiest I've ever been. I had so much fun, clean fun, but so much. And I really enjoyed myself. When I came back to Kenya, the thought of drugs didn't even hit my head until I think about a year later. I had an incident where I was sexually assaulted, and I couldn't handle it mentally. When I told my parents, they didn't believe me, because the mistake I made, like most women, is I wanted to clean myself so bad after it happened, and that's exactly what I did. So I got rid of all the evidence. I went to the doctor, and the doctor confirmed that yes, this has happened, but I didn't have the physical evidence on my body remaining, So I couldn't follow it up, and the cops wanted cash. I didn't have cash. My parents weren't willing to give me cash. So everything got really messed up in my head. I started using, and this time I was using hard. I had already switched from coke to heroin from one of my last relapses. So this time I just went straight for the heroin. I didn't even start with the coke, because coke is expensive. Heroin is cheaper, and it gives you a longer high. So I immediately went to the heroin, and I was spending around 8,000 a day just to get enough overdose. It was, I think, one of the darkest periods of my life. I lost entire chunks of time that I can't remember what I did, who I was with, where I was, nothing. Entire chunks. Up to date, you ask me what happened between 2015 and 2017. I have no clue. All I know is those years. Yeah, that's all I know. By this point, my parents were tired of the cycle. I mean, we had done 4 rehabs up to that point, countless detoxes, changed doctors so many times, changed therapists. And each time you change, you have hope. And then she relapses again, and the hope is torn apart. You have to start all over again. The one person who didn't give up, though, was my mom. Man, my mom is my rock star. My mom didn't give up. That woman fought for me. She fought for me. She gave me tough love, but it was tough love accompanied by so much love that I think about it, I feel like crying, honestly. She talked to anyone she could find, all the doctors she could talk to, every therapist she could get her hands on, found out which rehabs were considered better than the other, took me to different rehabs just to see if it would be a fit, if it would help. I ended up in rehab in Diani. I stayed there for 2 months once I realized it wasn't a fit for me. So I left that place, came back home. I didn't use for a couple of weeks, then started using again. This time, the using was accompanied with stealing, because they tried to limit my access to cash so that I wouldn't have cash to use, so... And a junkie is a junkie. You're going to find a way to get your fix one way or another. So I was like, you're not going to pay me for the work I'm doing, that's fine. I'm going to pay myself. So I would go take 50 G's from someone's wallet, go spend that, come back, take another 20 G's. Kept on doing that. My parents are complaining every day. Money is getting lost in the house. No one is talking. I know I'm the one doing it, but I'm not saying anything. So I'm just getting worse and worse in terms of my behavior, my mental status, my emotional status, until we got to crisis point when I tried to forge a check from my mom's account, and my intelligent self went to the exact same bank that knows my mother very well with a forged check that was written badly. And they told me that they would have to call her to confirm the check. I told them, okay, just give me a minute, let me go to the car and take something, and then you can do that. So apparently when I'm leaving this way, anti-fraud are coming in through the other way. So just literally, when I got back home in the evening, they had already called her, given her a full description of how I looked like. And then the worst part is that I had dreadlocks at the time with the tattoos and whatnot. I mean, I can't hide anywhere. So she's like, it was you, don't even lie. It was you. So I had to admit, I ran away from home that night, went and stayed with a cousin of mine. And the next day, I just told her that if she was serious, she was willing to pay for detox, that I was willing to go back to detox. So I went to a local detox. This time I didn't want them to spend any money on me. So I went to the cheapest detox I could find. Spent like a month there. By then, my brother, my little brother, who has been so supportive as well, had been looking into rehabs himself, and he found one that seemed to approach addiction from both a medical as well as a psychotherapeutic view. Because my problem is I have a mental illness in addition to addiction. I have this disorder called schizoaffective. So it's basically a mood disorder combined with schizophrenia. So I see things, I hear things that are not there, as well as my body cannot control my mood. So 1 minute I can be manic, totally over the moon. I have found myself in hotel rooms naked with men. I don't know how I ended up there. That's me in mania. Or I can be depressive. I'm at Nyali Bridge thinking how I'll throw myself over there, or how I'll jump in front of a car and be hit. So I never know. Each day is different for me. So I needed a multifaceted approach, somewhere whereby they could give me the medication I needed for my mental illness, as well as handle the psychotherapy I needed for my addiction. And we managed to find a rehab that was perfect in that, in Nairobi, called The Retreat. And that's where I went. And it honestly changed my life, because for once I was forced to face what I had been running away from. Everything that I had been running away from, I had to sit down and be like, okay, this is reality. This is what I have to deal with. Nothing is going to change unless I deal with it. And that's where the change, I believe, started. It wasn't easy because, mind you, the day I got out of rehab, I got high the same day. The exact same day. Despite this change that had happened inside me, I still, the urge was still so strong. But the spark had been lit within me. For once, I wanted to live, It was no longer about whatever happens. I now cared, and it made all the difference. So the last time I used was about 2 years ago. I normally don't count my days because for me that feels a bit morbid. It's like I'm counting down to my death. Don't want to do that. Well, physically, I'm now more prone to having seizures. Like, my body can't process pain anymore the way it used to. So now, anytime I get intense pain, I immediately go into a seizure. And that didn't used to happen before the drugs. So we suspect that's because of the drugs. In addition to that, some of my medication, the dosages had to be adjusted because of the damage the drugs had done to my brain, So that's just on the physical side. Emotionally and spiritually, I became completely bankrupt. So that's something I've had to rebuild from the bottom upwards. I stopped talking to my God. I actually hated God. I couldn't connect because before the drugs, I was a committed Christian. So all that used to go on in my head was, I did everything right, and you still brought me this? Like, this is the best you could do for me? I'm not going to worship you. Like, if you're that type of God, I don't need you. So I had to rebuild my trust and my faith in God all over again. It's still a process. I mean, there's still days where I don't want to trust him, but every day is better. Every day is better. I destroyed 99% of my relationships, and they're those I can't get back. So I've had to make my peace with that. But the ones that are still there, the ones that have stuck through with me, my ride or dies, those are my people. Those are my people. I think it's a combination of a few different things that I do. First of all, like you can see I'm wearing these beads, perfect for snapping. So whenever the thought of, oh man, I could use a line right now, I start snapping, and my mind automatically focuses on that. So it takes me out of that intense urge into a more wave-like urge, something I can ride through. And then I journal a lot, so that really helps. So I always carry a book in my bag. Whenever the thought comes in, I'm just like until I've gotten rid of all the junk I'm feeling inside. But most importantly is I talk now. Before I never used to talk. I would keep all my problems bottled inside. Now I'm the first person to call. Like if I feel if I feel my cravings are about to get out of control, I will call whoever, whenever, however. I have called my doctor at 3 in the morning and I told her, you know what, I'm sorry, but I don't care. You're going to listen because I'm about to go score and I'm not going to ruin my life. So if it means you're going to take 20 minutes out of your life, out of your sleep, you will take those bloody 20 minutes, but you will listen. So I talk, and the talking really, really helps. I don't know if you'd call it a mantra, but how I view life now is more of what will be, will be. All I can do is just hang on. Just that. That's how I live my life now. Because I realized I try to control so many things, and when I'm unable to control them, I get depressed about them, and that just brings me back to the drugs. So, what will be, will be. I'm just here for the ride.
100 African Stories, the Legally Clueless 2021 tour powered by African No Filter. We're traveling through Kisumu, Nakuru, Mombasa, and Nairobi, bringing you real, raw, and inspiring African stories. I am so grateful for how courageous Mo is and was with us, reaching out, wanting to share this story and then actually sharing it. She is one of those people who I'll never forget for as long as I live. We had a few candid moments after she recorded the story, and her personality is just one that I'll never forget her. Not for as long as I live. I just feel so inspired by her resilience, and I'm very drawn to people who have unlocked that power when it comes to owning your story. And more. I don't think I'll ever forget her. So remember, if you want to share your story on this podcast, in the show notes there's a link to a Google form. Fill it out and I will get back to you. It might take me some time to get back to you, but don't worry, I will get back to you. I'm letting you sit in your story and really think about whether you want to share it or not, okay? Another thing that you can do as you listen to this podcast, as you are very much part of this tribe, if you hear something in any of the episodes that you connect with or resonates with you, or you have some thoughts about it, just record a voice note and send that to the Legally Clueless hotline, which is also in the show notes. I was going through the hotline and I stumbled on this particular voice note that came all the way from Lesotho.
Hi Adele. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that I came across your podcast. Oh my goodness, it is so good. And I was listening to episode 135 as well as Agnes' story. In as much as it's not all the time you'll completely relate to the story, but even then, there's a form of inspiration that comes with it. It was so encouraging for me, honestly. And oh my god, I literally downloaded all of your episodes from I don't know when, and it's just been a blessing. It's just been great listening to your podcast. I'm just going to recommend it to everybody. I am from Lesotho, a country called Lesotho inside South Africa. But yeah, thank you so much for this podcast.
It is so wild. Oh my God. I just find it so wild that what we have here is a space where not just Kenyans, not just Nairobians, because that's where I'm based. It's just so wild that people from different countries, Africans from different countries can connect with this podcast. Humans from different countries can connect with this podcast. It's wild. And it's wild, it's magical, and it makes me feel so warm and fuzzy inside. And I'm just so full of gratitude that you would even take the time to record a voice note and send that in, to refer your friends and people in your circles to this podcast. Like, that's just, I'm so thankful. I'm just so thankful. So yeah, if you connect with something on this pod, I am all ears. Hit me up on the Legally Clueless hotline. The number is in the show notes. But there's some people who are listening on platforms that do not have show notes. That is not shade. It's just facts. So, because I've not memorized the number, let me pull it. Oh, wait. I have it. Okay, so the hotline is +254 768 628 790. So you can record a voice note and just send it through WhatsApp to that number. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, which is Legally Clueless, and you will see there's a brand new episode about Legally Clueless touring Paris that is fantastic, and I really think that you need to check it out. And lastly, if you are in Kenya, this podcast plays on Trace Radio every Monday and Wednesday at 12 noon and 11 p.m. and every Friday at 12 noon. Head over to traceradio.co.ke for a list of all the frequencies, and you can also stream Trace there. All right, I need to head out. I am going to hang out with my nieces and nephew. I actually don't think I told you. I don't know if I told you that I got another niece and a nephew. I think I also didn't tell you because did I tell you? I can't remember, because that particular sister is very not out there. Like she doesn't put out her stuff out there much. Like I feel like Amanda doesn't. Like even social media, it's minimal use. Yeah, so I just wanted to honor that. But yeah, I have a niece and a nephew. Another niece and a nephew. Oh my God. Y'all, it's so crazy. I can't walk into a mall without buying something for them. Like even stuff that is unnecessary. Earlier this week, I bought my first niece, Bernadette. I bought her a pair of shades. Like I know she's gonna break them. They're probably broken right after I gave them to her. But like, I was just like, whatever. It was 5 minutes of fun. It's worth it, you know? Being an aunt is just, it's so beautiful. I love those kids so much. Yeah, so I have to wrap up because I got lost in thinking about them. So I'm going to hang out with them. And so, yeah, thanks for listening to this episode to the very end. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.